Welcome to another episode. Here we are podcasting. This time we're actually in Germany. We're in Bonn. The weather outside is actually pretty nice, so it's good to be in Germany. And Christian, thank you very much for hosting us today.
Pleasure.
It's brilliant. So we're here with, I think, one of the most important providers in Europe. But before that, and we're going to talk a lot more about the technology side and our relationship to technology. It's going to be great. I really look forward to it. But before that, Christian, thank you very much. Could you just tell everybody who you are and what you're doing for TSystems?
Thanks. Yeah, indeed. So I'm working for TSystems, which is like the IT service provider as part of Deutsche Telekom Group. So we are, of course, on the one hand serving the Deutsche Telekom, but also focusing on enterprise customers as an independent service provider. My role and responsibilities, I'm the business owner of the private cloud service platform. So it's called the Future Cloud Infrastructure. And with that, we are aiming also to enterprise customers globally that want to have a secure, reliable, and sovereign private cloud platform.
We're going to talk a lot more about sovereign cloud because you and I talked a little bit before. That's kind of like one of the big topics in Europe, and with the political environment right now in the world, that's going to become even more important. And then when we talk about cloud, so I mean, just let's take the most important points for you and your team, because I mean, you have a pretty big team. You're global, right? So you're kind of like the biggest extension of global. So when you develop new products, projects, that's a global engagement, right? It's not just main Europe, it's the entire world.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say within the development of the future cloud infrastructure, we have globally around 400 people. That includes contractors, that includes, for example, Lenovo, that includes like vendors, partners, but it's truly a global endeavor. And this is not only a cost topic that you can say, okay, you go offshore because it's like cheaper. The reality is that you need experts, and we all know that the war of talents is really at its forefront already, and you have to see where you can get skilled IT professionals that are aware of that technology that we are, and you have to have the superior knowledge. You have to have the best experts, and the market would be just simply too small if you just say you stay in Germany or Europe.
Yeah, I mean, we see the same thing, right? It's like you have to kind of pick the people. It's we're very much in the people's business by the fact that we're using technology and working with technology every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we kind of spin out on that angle, I mean, I always ask people saying, how the hell did you get to your job? How did you end up where you are today? I mean, what about education? What about background? I mean, I always roll back on my own career saying, how did I ever get to where I am today? But what about you?
Well, to be honest, my focus was already as like a kid. I was fascinated by IT. I had the opportunity that my parents, they bought me a computer. And while everyone was having, like, you might remember the Commodore or the Amiga.
I do.
Everyone was just having
C64.
Absolutely. I was so jealous of my friends who having that computers, and my parents brought me an IBM, which is like literally, okay, so what can you do? So I had to, and even before that, I had a Schneider CPC, which is like an Amstrad. I think it's indicates it was an Amstrad. So the only opportunity to get games working on it is if you buy a magazine and type in the code, or if you just do programming yourself. So it started already pretty early. I was fascinated by computers. And then after school, I did an apprenticeship. And after that, I studied computer science. The good thing about that is that I was able to work at the same location where I did my apprenticeship, which was, by the way, the IT service provider for a bank. So I already started there, like from scratch, doing assembler, doing hosts, mainframe business.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's pretty.
That's pretty heavy stuff.
Exciting. Yeah. So I really, I'm not that old. I'm not that young, but I'm not that old. But I really learned it from the scratch, to have assembler, to have like COBOL, to know even with this like dot matrix printers with like endless paper, that where you just print out the source code, and then you have like a pile of that paper. I was really in that. But then I started, as I said, I started then studying IT. I was doing that here in somewhere close by, and then I did my master's in kind of an MBA master's in Australia, in Perth.
Oh, really?
That was also very nice. After that, pretty much after my studies, I entered Deutsche Telekom as a group, and it's like 25, and it's like 20 years already. I started consulting, doing security consulting, and then I just passed over several parts of the Deutsche Telekom group. By the way, I was before that I was in the area of workplace services, which is like end user computing, and therefore I also had a very close collaboration with the Lenovo in the end user computing space. So we were providing the end user computing for the Telekom group. And then 6 years ago, I was asked to get into the opportunity to create this private cloud from the very scratch. That was very
private cloud or a new cloud.
Actually it's a new cloud. So we had there was a cloud offering that we had at that point of time, but the decision was not to continue the existing service and renew it, or let's say to build new features on it, but to really start from scratch. And that was a good decision on the one hand, because you didn't have this legacy topics that you were facing, the challenges. But on the other hand, you are really have to start every process from the very beginning. So that is also very challenging, because there's nothing where you can really build upon it. So everything is new.
So you're rolling it back, actually? I mean, so you kind of rolling back the base to kind of start all over?
So we just make a cut, so that you say we took that opportunity and started all our tooling around that as well, like the ITIL tooling, IT service management. Everything that we had was just also refreshed, and so that we don't have any legacy to work upon.
So the first kind of, if we roll back, so the first kind of wow experience to technology was the IBM PC and coding everything up. I had the same thing with the C64 and the tape station. You kind of coded into a normal cassette tape and then put it down and loaded it into the C64, and you could watch the screen and you could actually see something happening. So that was pretty crazy.
Yes, exactly. That's awesome, indeed.
So that, I mean, the early beginning of the computer actually built your career.
Yeah, I grew up. Today, it's like for let's say for my kids or for the generation after us, it seems impossible that you didn't grow up with mobile phones. So you had fixed line. Whenever you want to make an appointment with someone, you had to do that in school or at home. So there's no chance of, I mean, I don't want to be that old-fashioned guy and say everything was better the old days. It was like really different. So no internet, no mobile phones. It was like a very different place, which had a definitely also a change in your style of behavior, style of doing things. So, but it was also a very good learning. I was just the other days I also had a conversation, and one thing that really drove my passion is, in the old days it was a little less complex in itself, and you had the ability to dig into things. So I always, one of my, let's say, if people ask me what is your give us a recommendation how you if you want to be an IT professional, I always say keep the be always interested how things work. Don't take them for granted and just use don't you be a user of an application as such. Try to understand what happens, how is the processing, what is the data flow, and these things. I mean, they sound abstract, but it's super important to understand what happens in the background.
That was how my C64 died, actually, because I kind of turned it over and screwed it up to look in the inside and tried to figure out how it worked, right? And took it apart, but was never capable of putting it together again. But I agree to that. I think that the core of the industry that we're in today, you kind of have to back up to some of the basics to understand the fundamentals, to be able to, it sounds a little bit old-fashioned, but I actually think that's the core of the recommendation that I'm giving people too, is that you can't just jump on it and expect technology to do everything for you. You have to understand the fundamentals and the basics to be inventive.
Absolutely. And since I mean IT has moved a long way. It's so much change, but it's still
Internet
the
started,
basics.
what was it, 1994, right? When we got real internet connections, and 1994 was the year where you kind of set on you didn't have like high speed internet. You had like this
It's modem.
56K modem.
Absolutely.
That was screaming at you,
Yeah.
and that 1994. It's not that far away actually.
Yeah, exactly. But the fundamentals of the IT still the same. You have like an x86 CPU somewhere in. Of course, you have ARM CPUs as well. But
Yes.
I mean, there's still like there's memory, there's a CPU unit, and there's some storage. So these are the fundamentals. When you look at the, I mean, there's lots of variances about that. But same for coding, for programming languages. The only thing that might take a shift is artificial intelligence, because that somehow is fundamentally driving things, because there it's very hard even for IT professionals to understand how the data is processed and how does the system comes to that decision or to that statement. Because it's not like usually when you have deterministic source code, you write something like this input, processing, output. And with this AI, it's like it's still this still the same pattern, but that it's not deterministic anymore. So it's this learning effect, and that is something which even for IT professionals brings a lot of complexity and a lot of problems to understand how things. And even I mean AI today is one of the biggest problems in AI is that even the IT professionals cannot, even the creators of the systems cannot determine how that this statement come from, because the AI is non-deterministic. It's just it learned things, and you cannot say which was the source of that statement. It's getting there, but we are still.
I mean, one of the crazy data points about AI, and if we go to ChatGPT, is that if you look at the young generation, ChatGPT has taken over search completely from Google, right? Yeah. So it's been a massive shift within a very short time frame.
Absolutely.
The issue with that is that you don't really know where the answer is coming from, right? Yeah. So when you Google something, you get a lot of results out. When you ask ChatGPT, you get one or two suggestions to the solution, right? So I agree. But I mean, if we back up, because I think this is really core to understand the issues of AI, is that we start by data, right?
Yeah.
And today in almost any company, the data is not ready to take that challenge. So you need to redefine your data sets.
Yeah.
And that's basically the new cloud that you're building. You're building the access layer to make it easier to come to the journey, right?
Yeah. And that is a perfect bridge to the let's say to the product, and where I do think what's really important nowadays. I mean, as you mentioned, data is it's been like a known fact for a while that data is the resource of the future. Yeah. So actually, if you have the pool of data, you need to protect it first of all. That's one of the things. So for example, if you're in a regulated industries, I always say very good example is if you're in the health industry. And in Germany, we are currently discussing about it's called the Patient Act data.
Yes.
Personal.
Yeah, protecting of your own data. Right?
Exactly, exactly. So whenever you go to a doctor, that's all the information is centrally stored. So you have to trust your system.
Yeah.
And you have to have a trustful partner that knows how to store data, how to protect the data from ransomware, but also from the competition. So it's not only and also from people that might be interested and have like a not so good intention. So this is data, and data protection and data structuring is I would say key nowadays. And this is for me a spot where I think we can make a difference in Europe. Because of course, on the one hand, you have this data regulation, this data privacy topic that sometimes look as being contradicting to all this innovation. It blocks innovation. That's a fact. But on the other hand, it's also sometimes it's good if you just make your first step after just having a lot of steps, and then you look what happens, and then you realize that maybe things can't get under control. We have to find a balance, but I think we are in Europe at least at that point of time where we really need to see how we can protect the data.
And that's where the initial opening of sovereign cloud came in, right? Is that sovereign cloud plays a very, very important role for the execution of AI or newborn infrastructure, right? Because the data centers are gonna change massively as well, right? It's gonna. So sovereign cloud as a concept, right, is most likely the most important way to protect data sets within every market. And that's where TSystems is, you have a network of data centers, right? So it's a customer choice of in which country you want to operate or can operate, right? Because of your infrastructure as an example.
I mean, as a service provider, of course, as TSystems, we provide the multi-cloud portfolio. So if our customers decide we want to go to a hyperscaler, of course, we will help them. So we can do every scale.
You'll try to convince them to stay? Or
Well, I would say I wouldn't say we try to convince them. We're looking at the customer and say, what's the best fitting platform for your purpose?
Correct.
And at the end of the day, some of the things which are like very much cloud ready and very much like fitting to a hyperscaler, there's no sense in just
Bonn in the cloud goes directly to tier 1 cloud.
Exactly. But I wouldn't say it's only a legacy, but there is like, of course, there are applications which require 24/7, like big Dart databases, like SAP Business. That's something which is not so much like hyperscaler fitted. And we also have that sovereignty part where you say we need to protect and we need to say, okay, this is like maybe a more European-based thing. And this is for us as TSystems being a German or Central European located IT provider. What's our right to play in the market? And our selling proposal is that we have everything, we can provide everything, but we also have a very strong private cloud offering that we can then say, okay, we operate that, for example, and you mentioned it, we can operate that out of Germany with German operations model, German data center. We can do that with a European operations model, European data centers, but we can also make that globally if a customer requires global coverage. That's also possible.
And multi-cloud basically means that you put your, let's just simplify it, your application to where it fits best.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. Right?
Absolutely.
And then you have an execution layer inside TSystems that gives the customer the, let's say, protection and security inside operating in that model, right?
Absolutely.
Do you have customers that are 100% cloud?
I would say the majority of our customers are, as we all have enterprise customers, they mostly have some legacy. None of the big enterprise customers just started in 2010 or later and say we are already cloud native. So the majority of our customers do have their core processes still in a way from the 20th century, like 20,000. And there you just don't have that cloud abilities that you have today.
No.
So of course,
but that's where you play a big role, right? Because in the transformation of the legacy data center into where customer wants to go with their 3 to 5 year strategies, that's where I see you guys are a very, very good alternative. One, because of the scale of your cost model. Two, because you said it yourself, right? I mean, the security inside your systems, your sovereign footprint inside the European markets. So you can actually scale AI as an example because that's what new cloud is about, right? It's about scaling the functionalities of AI.
Absolutely. You cannot, if you have that private cloud, you have the benefit that the data is already sovereign. And we can add, at TSystems, we can add that AI capabilities into your equation. So of course the hyperscalers, of course they have AI capabilities. Important for us as a service provider for the private cloud is also to have AI. But I think even here we have kind of a unique offering that we say AI in a sovereign platform. And especially we were talking about regulated industries. You're not even allowed by the local government, by the local regulations and the compliancy that you bring your data into an AI model of a hyperscaler because it's simply not allowed. So what would you do? You need to find a partner that enables this AI in a sovereign platform.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be regulated, right? Because it's again back to when if you sit on a gold mine, you sit on your own data. And if you're as an example, a big car manufacturer in Germany, right? You're not regulated, but you will never ever hand over your data, right? Because
Most probably.
that's basically what you live off, right?
Exactly.
If that leaks to competition, you're
100% right.
You're dead in the water.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So where does AI take us?
Yeah.
Short term, I'm not no long term vision of.
No, it's like fantastic when you see the capabilities. It's great. I mean, it's really fantastic. Sometimes you're sitting in a meeting, there are people talking about something, and you just ask Perplexity or whatever product you're using. Tell me something about it. What's your idea about that? And sometimes it's even like there's a vendor coming in, and before I meet the vendor, I ask what are the 3 weaknesses of the vendor's product. And then it tells me something about it. Yeah. And then you can utilize that as an opening question, and you sometimes get very much confused answers like, how did they know that? You must, and it's like super interesting and incredible knowledge that you get out of that. So it's fantastic. Where does it get us? Sometimes it's also scary because it's like, where's our spot as human mankind in that equation? I sometimes. It's really difficult.
I could give you a very interesting view. So I did another podcast that will be online to the channel where we talked about exactly that. And one of the points that came was that what human beings actually do into coding or designing a product is that allowing errors, if you know what. So if you make art, if you have an AI creating art, and you have a human being creating art, the human being differentiates from the AI in terms of there is mistakes, which is you can define as the human side. So parts of creating or coding the learning into an AI is that you allow errors, or you allow, instead of going straight to the topic, you kind of have sideways into it, right? So instead of it being just pink, it will be pink, green, or I think that's going to be one of the way why you and I will have. I mean, coding for sure, but again, to marketing, to art. I mean, there's lots of argumentation for why human beings needs to interact.
Yeah, indeed.
It's like driving. I mean, I would hate AI technology to take over driving entirely, because I actually like driving my car.
Yeah,
right?
But it's. I think this is just a matter of time. I think maybe the generation after us would perceive it as normal. They would be very surprised. People have been driving cars. I mean, that's super.
There's a difference. There's difference to whether driving is just getting from work to home, or driving is leisure, right? If it's motorcycles, right?
Yeah.
If you buy a motorcycle, you don't drive a motorcycle normally.
Agree.
To get from A to B.
Agree.
Drive it because it's fun, right?
Yeah. Agree. I mean, this is definitely, there's a spot there, but I mean, in general, most of these things will be sooner or later substituted by AI. And sometimes I ask myself, so what would be spots where my kids would have a profession, would have a job? So what's their spot to work in the future? I mean, I'm a very optimistic person. I think there is always, and technology and people and mankind can contribute and accelerate. But the thing is, with AI, it's like, this exponential growth in technology. It's sometimes very hard to understand, even for IT professionals. It's so hard to judge where the things go. And as this exponential growth curve, it will get faster.
But that's why, if we talk about planning inside technology, there's no such thing as long-term planning, because that's impossible, right? It's like asking people, saying, where do you think AI will take us 10 years from now? That's possible. Nobody can say anything about that, right? But I think in terms of technology, you and I have kids more or less the same age.
Yeah.
Is that my kids, they're both girls, the way they interact with technology is like, it surprises me every day, right? With iPads and with everything, it's intuitive.
Yes.
In the way that they use it, they don't think about it. They immediately kind of take any device up, saying, "Oh, I know how this is," and they kind of use it, right? And of course, that's because we've designed technology to be intuitive.
Yes.
But it's also the mindset of how they interpret devices, right? It's not. Yeah. They don't cling to it the same way you did to your x86 or I did to my C64, right? It's something
Yeah.
And they don't code, right? At least not now.
Yeah. But we're back to the point. First of all, you have to embrace the benefits. You have to embrace technology and put your resistancy aside that everything new is a bit like scaring. You have to embrace it, but you also have to have that passion to understand. We're coming back to the point. You have to understand, because if you only use it and don't understand it, there's a certain threat in it. So then you should have the ambition to at least have a basic understanding of what really happens to your data, to the service how is the service based that you're using. It gets harder, but it's still as an ambition that you should have.
Does that involve more risk-taking into designing enterprise AI or enterprise IT?
It definitely does. It definitely does, because it's, as I said,
you have to let go?
It's not so deterministic, so you don't know what happens, and so you have to let go. Indeed, yeah. Indeed.
So it's. Do you think it's up to companies, or is it up to governments to kind of regulate these things, or is it a combination of the two?
Most probably it's a combination, because government is always but by nature, government is a bit slower than the technology. So they most probably don't have the, let's say, first line of experience and the expertise to have the right regulation into that. So, and for example, Deutsche Telekom is now this is like, again, advertisement, but we are having a very active role in designing and putting ourselves a governance, how we act with AI. So for example, we have like call centers, and if you talk to a person, it's clearly spoken out if you talk to an AI or if you talk to a real person.
Yeah.
It might not make a difference, and even it's more convenient, because you have, for example, just imagine that you are in the middle of a night and your mobile phone breaks and you want to have someone who can help you, then most probably all of the experts in that area are asleep. And if you have an AI who has all that knowledge, has access to all that knowledge, they might help you even in the nighttime. So there's also a benefit. It's not only a threat. However, it still is important that you know that you talk to an AI and do not talk to a human, because that might, for some people, might be a threat or difficult.
But also, I mean, I've talked about this before in some of the other podcasts, is that the way that society and people adapts new technology used to be like 10 years. Now it's maybe 3 or maybe 2. And it's back to keeping up with it, right? That's almost impossible.
Yeah. Indeed.
So with those words, it was great talking to you, Christian. It was amazing getting into we were actually in an office, right? So that maybe if people heard doors banging or everything, but that was great seeing you. Thank you for taking the time to.
I wanted to give you an authentic feeling of Deutsche Telekom. So this is why we're in the middle of the.
I love the chair. I love the color.
Exactly.
So I have to consider that.
Magenta color.
Okay, and with that was the end of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time. Bye bye. Lenovo.